Hello everyone, and welcome to round number 5 of the 1970 Palma de Mallorca Interzonal tournament. Here Bobby Fischer with the white pieces faces Czech chess grandmaster Miroslav Filip, and Filip was a really strong grandmaster. He represented Czechoslovakia in 12 consecutive chess Olympiads. He won the championship of Czechoslovakia 3 times, and before this game he already faced Bobby Fischer 7 times. First he faced him in the Portorož Interzonal tournament, then he faced him in the Stockholm Interzonal tournament, then they played four games in the Curacao Candidates tournament in 1962. That's where Fischer first ever defeated him. The first 2 times they played together, the game was drawn. Then once again in the Varna Chess Olympiad in 1962, and this is game number 8. So in the 7 previous encounters, 5 of the games were drawn and 2 of the games were won by Fischer. But last time they played, it was 1962, and this is 1970, so 8 years have passed. And surely Miroslav Filip has gotten much stronger in those 8 years, but so has Bobby. So without further ado, let's check this game out. And this game will be quite a treat because Fischer opens the game with 1b3. Sorry about that. Fischer opens the game with 1b3. So the Nimzovich Larsen attack. We have d5, bishop to b2, and now knight to f6. Knight to f3, e6, and since black never really shown any intention of developing the b8 knight, usually when you go for a Nimzo Larsen attack, when black develops knight c6, you will go e6 and bishop to b5, but as black did no such thing, here Bobby goes g3, he prepares for a double fianchetto. Bishop to e7, bishop to g2, we have castles, c5 now, c4, and here Bobby is basically inviting Filip to push the pawn to d4, close the position, but if Fischer allows this, then surely Fischer is prepared for this, and if you're not prepared for this, then you're not going to have a lot of fun playing this. So instead, Filip goes for knight to c6. We have c captures on d5, knight captures on d5, and now knight to c3. Bishop to f6 by Filip, and here Fischer could go for a series of exchanges, but that doesn't really give white all that much. Knight captures, bishop captures, rook to b1, pawn captures knight, rook captures bishop, and now after d4 all is well here for black. So after this bishop to f6 move, queen to c1, Fischer simply defends the bishop on b2. We have b6 now, knight captures on d5, e captures on d5, and now d4. And here bishop to a6 by Filip. It seems like Fischer is offering a free pawn here, but not really. Of course, you can't capture with the pawn because the knight is hanging on c6. But after knight captures, now you can either exchange your bishops or not. You can simply play c captures on d4, and you are up a pawn as black, but it's double the d pawn. Not really something to look forward to. Queen d2, rook d1 will win the pawn easily. So after d4, Filip goes for bishop to a6. Attacks d2 pawn, but also pins it as the rook is on f1. We have rook to e1, getting out of the pin, but also now protecting the e2 pawn. And only now Filip goes for knight captures on d4. We have bishop captures on d4, so allowing Filip the bishop pair. C captures on d4, and now queen to a3, attacking Filip's bishop on a6. Bishop back to b7, and here we have rook a to d1. Now you can see that black is up a pawn, but again it's a double the d pawn, and you're not going to be able to defend it. Bishop to e7 attacking the queen, queen to a4 now with a triple attack against the d4 pawn, queen to e8 offering a queen trade, but now Fischer declines and only now recaptures on d4. Rook to c8, and now queen to f4. Now the material on the board is equal, but you can see that Fischer has 2 pawn islands and Filip has 3 pawn islands, and Filip has this isolated d pawn, which Fischer will make sure that it remains a target. Bishop to f6, we have knight to d4, and now bishop to e5, attacking Fischer's queen. Queen to e3, and now g6. Knight to b5, a very nice move that really, Filip has to decide what to do here. Fischer is offering the knight. If queen captures knight, then Fischer will play queen captures on e5. But what's the idea? If you play something like a6, then you get a bishop captures on d5, attacking the undefended bishop on b7. After bishop captures, rook captures. And again, you can capture the knight, but now the bishop is attacked twice here. So after you move the bishop, simply queen captures, rook captures, and after knight attacks both rooks, bishop captures, rook captures, and after rook to c2, you can play a4, and black can capture on e2, but you can capture on b6, so white will remain a pawn up, and in Fischer's hands, this would most likely turn into a victory. What Filip missed here after this knight to b5 move is a very subtle idea, so feel free to pause the video here and try to find a nice move Filip could have played here. It's not really anything that, you know, changes the course of the game. It would be a slight improvement, but a move like this might, you know, stick with you and help you in the future. So, for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations, you are an excellent player. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, here a move that could have been played is rook to c5. Simply attack the knight on b5, and now you're threatening d4, and also the knight is attacked, so you do have to do something. Knight to d4 is the best. It blocks the d-pawn and gets the knight out of the attack. If you capture here, then you lose the game. Then comes d4. After you move the queen, simply captures, and now queen to a8 checks the king and picks up the knight on a7. Let's say king g1, queen captures on a7, and it's game over for white. So a very interesting idea here, rook to c5. But okay, in the game, Filip went for queen captures on b5, Fischer played queen captures on e5, rook f to e8, attacking Fischer's queen, queen back to b2, and now rook to c5. Filip knows that Fischer will now create an attack against the d5 pawn, so he will use the open c file to double up his rooks. We have h4 by Fischer, rook e to c8, Filip doubles up on the c file, and now rook to d2. Fischer doesn't allow Filip to bring his rook to c2, but also prepares to double up on the d file. Rook to c3, grabbing more space, now comes rook to d2. Queen to c5 with a triple battery on the c file, and now, well, bishop captures on d5 is definitely a possibility. You can play this, grab the pawn immediately. First, Fischer wants to get rid of any weaknesses he has in his own camp before he captures the d-pawn. First, b4, attacking the queen. Filip moves the queen, queen to e7, and now not capturing the pawn just yet, but first e3, getting all of his pawns on dark squares first. We have h5 by Filip, and now comes even a3. So Fischer put all of his pawns on dark squares, so none of the pawns will be Filip be able to use later as targets, and only now is he ready to capture the d5 pawn. King to h7 by Filip, and now comes bishop captures on d5. Bishop captures, rook captures on d5, and queen to e4 now. And Fischer plays rook to d8. Rook to d8, a very nice move because it completely immobilizes the c3 rook. If you ever move the rook, let's say rook c2, seems like a very nice active move. You get queen h8, this is checkmate. So, a very nice move by Fischer. Of course, you don't want to allow the exchange here. Filip played queen to f3. So, what do you do here? King to h2. It's a wonderful move by Fischer because, well, at some point Fischer would definitely like to bring his rook over to d7, threaten the f7 pawn, but currently this loses to rook c1 check. If you move the king, you get queen to h1 or rook to h1 checkmate. So if you capture, you would be down a rook, so completely winning game for black. So first, after this queen to f3, simply king to h2 by Fischer, not allowing, if this rook ever comes to c1, to be able to play this with check. So we have rook 8 to c4, and now comes finally rook 1 to d7, attacking the f7 pawn. We have g5, but now simply other rook comes to f8 with a double attack against the f7 pawn. King to g6, now comes rook to g8 check. King moves back, and now rook captures on g5, grabbing that another extra pawn, and black now has simply no counterplay. The queen on b2 is beautifully placed, guarding against queen captures on f2, and also, as we've said, you can never move the c3 rook because, well, okay, now it's not queen h8, but now queen to g7 will be checkmate. Here, rook to c8 was played. Filip brought the rook back. Now comes rook 7 to d5 from Fischer, king to h6, and now rook d to f5, and it was in this position that Miroslav Filip resigned the game. The queen is under attack. There's really no good square for the queen. You could play something like queen to c6, but then you get queen to e2. Again, the threat of queen captures here will be checkmate. And there's no good way to defend this. You can try something like this, simply give up the queen for no reason, but white can simply ignore you. So let's say rook f6, and after you capture, only then deliver checkmate. So yeah, a wonderful game by Bobby from round 5, and yet another opportunity missed by Filip to get at least one win against Bobby Fischer. So this is their 8th game together, and so far the score is 5 draws and 5 wins for Bobby Fischer. So an excellent game. Bobby Fischer is currently 4.5 out of 5 in the Palma de Mallorca Interzonal tournament of 1970. Very nice tournament so far for him, and like I said, especially for someone who didn't even qualify through the 1969 US Championship Series. So yeah, that's the game. I do hope you enjoyed it, and I do hope you're enjoying the series so far. Thank you for watching. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. I actually pre-recorded this video yesterday. I'm currently in Belgrade. I came to Belgrade to meet David Lada. He's there on business. So if you're interested in what's going on, feel free to follow some of my other social media, and keep in touch. So yeah, thank you all, and I will see you soon with game number 7.